all my life, been grinding all my life. Sacrifice, hustle paid the price. Want a slice, got to roll the dice. That's why all my life, I've been grinding all my life. Look.
Welcome, North Texas, to JMS Podcast, episode number 3. Episode number 3 is going to be a episode of a subject that it's real. People talk about it, and with our culture in U.S., I feel it's just important to be talking about this. I've experienced this personally. So this is one of the reasons I'm talking about this subject, and it's racial tension in U.S. and racial tension in the soccer community. After seeing what transpired at the Alabama brawl, the riverboat, I feel like that's just a matter of time before that happens at North Texas fields with little kids. I'm sure it's already happened. It's happening. I've experienced it from a sideline. So I just wanted to talk about that. Growing up in Oak Cliff, my parents, I was blessed to have parents that never, ever judged or looked or have any racial tension, any racism. Growing up, I didn't know the stereotype jokes of fried chicken or Kool-Aid or kids in the back of a pickup truck or fitting 6, 7, 8 kids. Didn't know because my parents never, ever judged anybody. My best friend growing up, Courtney Briscoe, black kid, I was able to know his family. I went to South Dallas, hung out with some of his cousins. In 7th grade, my pre-algebra teacher that adopted me, that I shared in episode 1, Deborah Rosenberg, white lady. So me living with her, I was able to know their the Anglo culture, meet the Higginbothams, the Murrays. And so actually growing up, I actually thought racism didn't exist. I felt that the only people that were racist were people that really were in KKK, the people that you really saw like black and white, like, okay, that's somebody that's racist. They don't hide it. What I've learned is that there's so much racism, so much racial tension. So as growing up, started coaching 7 little girls as my ministry, those 7 little girls were all Hispanic. My daughter, my niece, second cousins. I could not pick up a player in North Texas that wasn't Hispanic. Picked up a Jada Thomas from basketball. What I mean is I couldn't pick up a player that played soccer, that had experience, because we were labeled as the dirty Mexicans, the dirty team. And so picking up Jada Thomas from elementary school, player's friend, I felt our team was labeled the stereotype, the cheaters, because Hispanics stereotype are known as coaches that will alter a birth certificate. I knew that I had to basically guard against that. So I used to make everybody send me original birth certificates, shot records, and school report cards. So I verified they were in the right grade, shot records matched, birth certificate. So going from 7 little girls, when we started in my backyard, growing all the way to 60, I could not pick up players that were white, for whatever reason. And I felt it was because we were labeled as the dirty Mexicans, dirty South, dirty. And so I experienced that race was a big factor in that. It wasn't until we picked up a little girl from Genesis. She was playing with my niece that was an 02 on that team. And she was an 01. So my brother-in-law told her about the teams, and she joined our team. Sweet family, great soccer player, great character. And she joined, I started her on the second team, then moved her up to the first team. She was our leader, work ethic. She became our captain. And I think from then we started picking up more players, and parents would always, I had you pegged wrong. I used to think this. And I didn't know all this was happening, that coaches, parents / agent parents were spreading fear into parents. Don't go there because of this. So as the club grew and grew, and we went from 7 little girls to 60, then I started coaching boys. That just continued. Boys, my son, his team, primarily Hispanic, inner city kids. I did it 8 years for free. So it wasn't because of cost, but we had a lot of inner city kids. And more, it was constantly, they were the dirty team, dirty club. And the more success that we had, the louder those issues became. I remember at one game, we were beating a team, and one of the parents yells it loud enough where all our parents heard it, where I heard it. He said, yeah, they're good, but when they grow up, they're going to be working at McDonald's. And our parents were ticked off. They were like, Coach, if I didn't have respect for you, I would have done this. Because I used to always tell my parents, we're going into hostile territory. Don't give them the rope to hang you. If you show up with a Raiders jersey, a Cowboy jersey, tattoos, don't act like the thug that they've already stereotyped you. Shake their hand, say good game, because you're representing me. For me, soccer was my ministry. So I had control of my parents' sideline, sticks and stones. I remember one time at a game, one of my players, Valerica Quindo, played on the Puerto Rico national team. She might have been 10 at that time. She's crying. The referee stops the game. And she comes in, and I was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she says, they keep telling me to go back to Mexico. One of the parents told me that she yelled on the sideline before she started crying, yelled to the sideline, says, I don't even talk Spanish. And so these girls realized the racial tension, because I remember my daughter, after a state cup game, getting in the car, asking me, Dad, why do they hate us so much? I said, what are you talking about? She says, yeah, when we're marking them on corner kicks, they're like, oh, these dirty Hispanics, these dirty spit. She goes, they said that? He goes, yes. And he goes, you just got to ignore it. They're sore losers. We're winning, and competition brings out the worst in people. I remember going to USYSA regionals and looking, and we're the only Hispanic minority team out there. We wore the Brazil uniform, so we stuck out like a sore thumb. I remember one game, I still remember the field. There was a hill behind the door, behind the goal, and there was a parking. So parents sat on that hill from the opposite team. And we were winning like 2-0, and the racial slurs and going back to Mexico, and it started. So I just feel like there's so much racial tension that now, as the club's grown, people look at DKSC, look at me, says, why is it primarily Hispanic coaches? Majority of those coaches, the John Escobels, the Jay Vilmas, the Pablos, majority of those coaches started coaching when we were kicks. As the club grew, these coaches were doing it as volunteers. Then they were making peanuts, where there was $200, $300 a month just to pay their gas. They were doing it to give back for the love of the game. As success comes and you have platforms, those coaches are coaching in those platforms because they put in the work. He goes, but people want to say they were given that because they're Hispanics. I've heard this from parents. Juan only takes care of the Hispanics. The Hispanic coaches, he only takes care of the Hispanic players, which if you look at my rosters from growing up with the 01s, look how many Anglos and Blacks had played on my team from the 06s. It's ridiculous, but people are spreading those lies, fears, because their aging parents and coaches. So it's constantly, all we got to tell them is he's racist. I honestly think is anybody that brings up the race card, you got to look yourself in the mirror and are you a racist? To me, there's so much tension. And I actually think that that's just our country now. Everything's about race. Everything's about, and in a club where I feel as a coach, soccer is my ministry. I don't care what race you are. Okay. I really don't care. If you look at the history, I'm going to serve you and love you the same way. Okay. Because this is my soccer ministry. But I feel like in this culture that we're living in, I feel it's just a matter of time that if we don't talk about these issues, if you don't get educated, and maybe the people that are spreading these things, it's okay to let them know that they're the ones that maybe have to check themselves, look in the mirror. Again, these are issues. If anybody wants to come on these podcasts to continue talking about these issues, these are important issues that right now our country's divided.